This episode of Liberty Lines is brought to you by
Visiting Branson, Missouri? Hungry for some authentic Southern barbecue? Big D's strives hard to be the best Branson barbecue and was recently awarded first place in the Best of Branson Viewers' Choice Award for Best Barbecue in Branson. With their friendly service and low and slow cooking methods, Big D's Barbecue prides itself on serving up delicious smoked meats using their own proprietary blend of dry rub spices for full flavor. They smoke their meats low and slow for maximum flavor and tender, juicy goodness. The brisket is melt in your mouth awesome. Try one of their signature platters and combine it with Big D's signature pit beans, smoked corn, or coleslaw. Each recipe has been developed over the years and is an original you'll find only at Big D's Barbecue. Located at 1550 State Highway 248 on the Red Route between O'Reilly Auto Parts and Simmons Bank. Their phone number is 417-337-5100. Tell them Pat Answers Archives sent you. See you soon. Welcome to Liberty Lines on Pat's Answers Archives. I'm Pat Cantor. Any discussion about the proper role of government can be improved by a look back at the ideas upon which our nation was founded. In the Declaration of Independence, we find perhaps the most concise expression of those ideas and beliefs. The Declaration is clear. The founders believed in individual liberty, defined by the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, secured by a government created for that purpose, gaining its legitimate power from the consent of the governed. The order of the words in the Declaration is important. Upon carefully reading the Declaration, you'll notice that there is no mention of government until the moral order of the world the founders envisioned is laid out. Their philosophy begins in a state of nature where no government has yet been created by human beings. It is not until after the moral order is established that the political order, which comes from this moral order, is discussed. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Here, in the first line, the authors let us know that reason provides the source of the proposition to follow. They say that the truths that follow are self-evident, which is to say they are deducible through reason. This indicates that the founders are working within the philosophical tradition of natural rights. This viewpoint holds that there is a higher law of right and wrong that can be used to derive just laws. That all men are created equal. This phrase tells us that the founders rejected the hierarchical views held by many at the time, including some natural rights theorists claiming that some people deserve different legal treatment because they are superior to others. Instead, the founders hold that we all have equal natural rights. Therefore, before the law, we should all be treated the same. This statement does not argue for equality of outcome, such as equal incomes, which is a sort of egalitarianism that became fashionable during the past century. To argue for egalitarianism is to argue that we do not all have equal natural rights, because in order to achieve an egalitarian outcome, assets or the product of one's labor need to be taken from some and given to others, which is to argue that some, those redistributed to, have superior rights to those redistributed from. At this point, the source of the argument, reason, and the first premise that we are all equal have been put forth. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Here we're told the source of their rights. They are not given to us by the government, rather, we are born with them. This puts the power in the hands of the people, to be granted only as they see fit. This follows clearly from the state of nature idea. Humans exist first, and then create governments. If our rights came from government, humans existing before government would not have rights that are inherent to being human, which is impossible. Also of note is that the founders are using the language of rights rather than virtue or morals as they lay down their vision. They are creating a system based on law and liberty, not one meant to impose certain values. This is consistent with the idea of everyone being equal, which includes the equal right to pursue different courses, some which others may not find virtuous, but which are our natural right, so long as they do not interfere upon the liberties of others. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There are an infinite number of rights that can be summed up in one right: the right to be free. This sentiment is captured in this phrase, which points out that among our inalienable rights are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words add further strength to the distinction between rights and values. One's pursuit of happiness may take an entirely different form than another's. But that's not the concern of the arbiter of power. That arbiter, as we will soon find out, is limited on using its power to secure our rights. We are not told how to pursue happiness, but rather that we're born with a right to do so, as our own personal set of values direct us. Having already set forth the notion of equality, however, we have no superior right over others, and are thus obligated to respect the equal rights of others to pursue happiness as they so desire. Embodied in the concept of rights is the implicit argument of property, since to have rights is to have the property that is rights. The founders have now created a world where individuals are free to pursue the ends they choose, so long as they do not violate the rights, that is to say, so long as they do not take the property of others. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Here is the first we hear of the existence of government, after a world based on truths derived from reason and based on equal treatment and the right to be free has been drawn. And it is clear why the government has been created: to secure these rights. Now that the founders have moved from a state of nature to a state of government, other questions arise about scope and legitimacy of the government. Reason brings us this far, but as we get into specific decisions about where one person's rights end and another's begin, subjective decisions will have to be made. Some, preferring private enforcement of rights, may argue that forcing them to pay for public enforcement is itself a violation of rights, and they would be right. But as a practical matter, who else is to make the subjective decision on such things as how much evidence is needed to arrest someone, if not a government that has been given such power by the governed? If such a debate were to be decided privately, what would happen if the two parties disagreed and refused to allow a third arbiter to decide? To solve this dilemma, governments are instituted to secure our rights and granted the right to the legitimate use of force. We will return to Liberty Lines after these important words.
It is important to understand that the Constitution does not create rights for anyone. It simply serves as a grant of power to and a blueprint for the structure of the federal government. The rights of the people existed before the founding of the United States. You do not have constitutional rights. You just have rights. To protect them, you must understand them. The book, A Republic If You Can Keep It, can help you with that understanding. Available at patsanswers.com/blog. Click on the Store tab. $16.95 plus shipping and handling. All major credit cards are accepted. Buy it today.
Welcome back. We were discussing the founders' vision of the government and its proper purpose, so we return to the Declaration of Independence. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. With the power to protect the rights naturally vested in the people, the government can only legitimately exist if some of those rights are consensually handed over by the people. As I mentioned earlier, when subjective decision of where one's rights begin and another's end, the need for the third-party arbiter arises. Questions arise here as to how much power is legitimate for the government to exercise once this consent has been given. Surely, all decisions made by the government cannot be considered legitimate on the basis of consent, as that would lead to tyranny of the majority, or possibly the minority. The founders have already said how far this power can be taken in the previous line: to secure these rights. This limited amount of political determination is legitimated. The rest is to be done privately. If the state gets its legitimate power from the government, who hands over certain powers they possess in that state of nature? Then the realm of legitimate powers that government can possess is limited to those powers possessed by individuals in the state of nature. In the state of nature, one person does not have the right to forcibly take from another person and give it to a third, as this would violate the property rights of the person being taken from. Yet this is exactly what the redistribution activities of our government does. Since this is not a right individuals have in the state of nature, it is not a right that can be consensually given to the government, and thus it cannot be a legitimate power that the government possesses. Despite this careful wording, which outlines a vision of individual liberty and responsibility, and a government limited to securing our rights, the American government has become something very different. Still, although the current government is much larger than what the founders had envisioned, and stretches well beyond the borders of its legitimacy, it is still difficult to find many governments in the history of mankind that have managed to be as limited for so long. This has not happened by chance, but rather by choice, by the choice of the people of the United States to resist at least some of the temptations of governmental control, and by the choice of a dedicated few to remain vigilant in their efforts to fight the many subtle forms of government oppression. By getting involved in the political process and getting our elected representatives to know freedom, not government, is what you want, we keep the light of liberty burning, while so many others try to snuff it out. Signing the Declaration was an act of treason. The signers, in the Declaration's conclusion, openly declare themselves enemy to the British Crown. The word ought, used twice in the conclusion, implies moral correctness and makes a final appeal to natural law. The conclusion makes several appeals to God. Its authors call upon divine intervention to aid their cause and appeal to God in order to persuade the nations of the world of the justness of their act. When taking the nation's founding document and the intent of its framers into account, the modern liberal notion that images of God and other references to deity are opposed to liberty and should be removed from public buildings is ludicrous at best and treasonous at worst. That's my take on it. What's yours? Feel free to share your thoughts by emailing me at librarian@patsanswers.com and by sharing a link to this blog with your friends. This has been Liberty Lines on Pat Answers Archives. I'm your host, Pat Kansor. Join us again next time.
This episode of Liberty Lines is brought to you by...
The smallest things can mean so much when it comes to saying, I love you. They encourage a stronger connection all year long. Give and get peace of mind. Purchasing life insurance is one of the best ways to show your loved ones just how much you care. A life insurance policy is a big step in helping to protect the financial future of those who matter most. To learn more about life insurance from American Family Life Insurance Company, connect with John Hagee, American Family Insurance Agent, Hollister, Missouri. He can help you understand what amount of coverage is right for your needs and walk you through different options to get the protection your loved ones deserve. American Family Insurance, John Hagee Agent, 2527 South Business Highway 65 in Hollister, Missouri. Phone number 417-334-0704. Email jhagee@amfam.com.